The Hunt for Wolverine is on, and Daredevil is on the case. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an I Review, a show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you should go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The book that I want to talk about right now is Hunt for Wolverine, Weapon Lost #1, which is written by Charles Soule, and this is telling a detective story. Kitty Pryde's come to Daredevil, and he's recruiting a few friends of his own in order to hunt down Logan. But what we're going to find out in this book is something unexpected. Kicking off the first of the 4 Hunt for Wolverine miniseries, we have Weapon Lost, written by Charles Soule. So this is Daredevil's writer, and it's Daredevil focused. Daredevil has been called in by Kitty Pryde in order to investigate the whereabouts of Logan. And the way we open up the book is we see Daredevil making his way across the city, and he's talking about a variety of different things. As he's normally a vigilante, he doesn't really keep records, but this is a case far too good to pass up that opportunity. He's talking about his certain skill set. As he makes his way across the city, he tells us that he knows everyone's secrets, but the real key to this book isn't necessarily the action that's presented in the panels. It's more about the context that's bringing things into perspective. Daredevil is a phenomenal detective when it comes to these things. It's about investigation, and we actually see an Inhuman motorcycle riding across the sky, and he knows exactly who this is. It's Frank McGee, a former investigator that has actually been exposed to the Terrigen Mist, becoming an Inhuman, and it allows him to emit blinding light from his eyes and, of course, take a snapshot of everything, the entirety of the city, and investigate it later on, like a flash of a camera. And this is a conversation that's going to be taking place between Daredevil, Matt Murdock, and Frank McGee, recruiting for this investigation, for this miniseries, so that way we have more people that can take on the task of tracking down Wolverine. And he entices him. He doesn't entice him with the threat of danger. It entices him with the one man that it needs to be found. One person that's missing, a missing mutant, and it's Wolverine, and that gets him just enough. Though Charles Soule does make a few jokes in here about Old Man Logan, Laura Kinney, James Hudson, or an android in reference to some odd version of Weapon X. No, this is the OG, the original, the person that escaped from the adamantium, well, pulled from the adamantium by Kitty Pryde that we found out, but this is the person that everybody is looking for, and it's not just Daredevil, it's not just Frank, but he decides, yeah, I'm in. So when we're talking about Weapon Lost is not an action-packed book. It's an investigative book. It's about tension. It's about building up drama. It's about the dialogue between the characters. It's about creating this scenario where they're looking for clues, they're trying to investigate, and they're trying to put pieces together. It's about creating a puzzle and a path to find out more about where Wolverine is. And that leads them to another person that they want to recruit to their team, and that's Misty Knight, accosted by a bunch of different people that are trying to hold up a bar, taking jewelry and watches. They look over in her direction as she reaches for an 8-ball with her mechanical hand and just crushes it to dust inside her palm. That leaves them scattering, running out of the bar, so that way they can have a relatively uninterrupted conversation. When Daredevil approaches, overall, she kind of rebuffs him. She doesn't really need to be talking to Daredevil at any point in time. She's retired and he doesn't have anything that she wants. However, Frank gets the respect. He's a former cop. He goes over his history, tells about exactly what's going on. When he turned into an Inhuman, he of course went back to work, but he's still that Inhuman guy. And then when he's not that Inhuman guy, if he tries to go back to the police force now, he's the guy that left. And that's not always a good sign inside police circles. Of course, what he knows about Misty Knight, of course, she's a cop that was meant to be on the rise. She was making her cases, booking criminals on the fast track to some success inside the department until a terrorist explosion took her arm and was replaced by the mechanical one that we see now, which brought her into that vigilante lifestyle. And this is a relationship. This is creating this kind of conversation, this common connection, this common bond between Misty Knight and Frank McGee that Daredevil couldn't really do. He's always been associated with a mask. He's always been hiding, whereas these 2 former police officers have always been taking things on head on. Daredevil even made the allusion to his super senses, his hearing, that is the ability to kind of take in this entire conversation, but whatever they say, he kind of tried to leave it up to them. So Charles Soule kind of throws a blanket over that one and says, you know what, this is a conversation that's relatively personal. We don't really need to know what it says. All we need to know is that it's effective. And as they're flying over the city in this, what looks to be a flying Mustang owned by Misty Knight, they find a home. They find a lead in a home in New Jersey, which is looking dilapidated and relatively unkempt. You know, the lawn hasn't been mowed in quite some time. It reeks of death. It smells terrible. And what Daredevil finds is that not only that, but it's bouncing, it's radiating with electromagnetic waves. And that is a source of tension for him. It makes his head explode as if fireworks were going off at the 4th of July. They kick in the door and they find themselves next to Cypher, a mutant that has the ability to communicate via the internet. He speaks a language. The language is technology, the internet, communicating with all these different tech pieces. And he's sick. He's not necessarily in his right mind because as he's stuck in this technological void as he's kind of making light of the entire situation. And Frank just takes out his Inhuman pistol and smashes the power cord, leaving nothing on inside the entire building. Cypher goes on the offensive, pulling out some sort of ray gun and attacking them, leaving Daredevil no choice but to throw his baton and concuss him, knocking him out and leaving him to recover. Due to this sickness, this illness, this infection that was coming out of the electronics, Cypher was going to basically starve to death, just sitting there taking in information and relaying it some other way. But if he ever gets out of control again, always, while he's chomping on his burger, he can just have Daredevil concuss him again so that way he might be able to do something. But the key is that they're looking for information. This man that speaks the language of the internet, what can he do to help them find Logan? And he's like, dude, that's so easy. Logan? Logan's everywhere. As he shows his smartphone, sees where most of the web hits are coming from, the US, the European Union, internationally beyond that, a small tabloid story saying Wolverine got me pregnant. There's so much information on Logan. The rest of this story is going to be about finding out what's valuable, what's not, and where they can go from here. So the story that Charles Soule is telling is not necessarily going to be the action-packed one that you would want. It's not going to be big, bombastic. It's not going to have spectacle, or it's more about cerebral. It's all about finding those individual pieces, putting together these clues, and setting the table for those things, setting that stage. And it's not necessarily going to be for everybody. If you want a detective story, if you want something that's a little bit more dialogue, relationship heavy, this is going to be a bit better book for you. If you're looking for something a little bit more large and in charge, a little bit more spectacle, you might want to check out some of the other books. A little horror twist, go with Claws of a Killer. If you're looking for a little bit more big blockbuster action movie, go with Adamantium Agenda. And then finally, if you like a little bit of dark romance and the former lovers of Wolverine, Mystery and Madripoor might be the one for you. If you're talking about Weapon Lost, I found that it was a good book, but it wasn't necessarily the easiest to engage with, especially if you were looking for a little bit more action. But that doesn't mean that issues 2, 3, and 4 aren't going to be able to deliver on a little bit more combat and a little bit more intensity compared to this first one. But I want to know what you guys think too, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.